1 week later, the impact of Rob Ford's return on Toronto's election campaign. We talked to a public relations expert about whether the Ford strategy will work. Also, is there a Ford campaign to sideline journalists from asking tough questions? I'm Affan Chowdhry. Welcome to Globe Now. It was just a week ago Mayor Rob Ford returned to City Hall after a 60-day leave of absence. But as expected, he returned with a bang. His first news conference focused extensively about his time in rehab and his struggles with alcohol and drug use. He talked about being ashamed, embarrassed, humiliated over the things he had said and done in the past. And it wasn't long before he pivoted into a campaign-style speech, making it clear that Rob Ford is ready to get right back in the race. We're joined now by Crean, who is with National Public Relations. He's going to help us make sense of Ford's strategy. Welcome, John.
Great to be here.
What do you think of Rob Ford's strategy?
Well, a lot of attention put on the strategy for the Rob Ford's so-called comeback. I think it was a failure in many ways. I think it was a failure because he tried to control it too much. He tried to pre-select the media and have a pretty controlled message. And I think at this point, I think he needs to be more transparent, more open, to show there's not just a new Rob Ford physically, but a new Rob Ford in terms of his campaign style and openness.
Although, some people would argue that he was very transparent about his problems, his rehab. I mean, do you not feel that that bought some patience, perhaps some forgiveness among voters?
Yeah, I certainly think that the acknowledgement that Rob Ford had to go to rehab and him going to rehab, I think in many ways some people have said, that's the right thing for him to do, for him and for his family, the right thing to do. Now that he's back and physically a little stronger, hopefully, and hopefully a little bit more fit, the question is, there are still all those questions that need to be answered, many of which he continues to refuse to address and answer. And I think he's trying to control the media more, perhaps manipulate the media more by pre-selecting and limiting who gets exposure to him in those early days. And I think that was probably not the right strategy.
So how would you have advised him differently?
Well, it's always a problem for me because I don't know what I don't know about Rob Ford's stories around the folks he was hanging out with before and the issues that have been plaguing him for many, many months. But I do think that an upbeat and positive Rob Ford that showed an openness to having honest dialogue around all of the issues would have been the right thing. I think it's going to be a challenge knowing that there are certain things that Rob Ford is not going to want to become part of that campaign narrative. He would like to move on. I don't think the media is going to let him.
Would you have advised him to come back at this stage to City Hall?
I think Rob Ford had the latitude to take more time off, frankly. I think a lot of people aren't paying attention over the summer. The election isn't until late October. And people really started paying attention, maybe a month or maybe 2 months. But certainly I think he had more latitude to take more time away and out of the media spotlight. And I'm not sure being in the media spotlight now is helping him at all, especially because the public has seemed a little bit more angry than they seemed actually before he left, which is surprising.
Which was evidenced perhaps in the case of the shirtless jogger. But I mean, his return poses challenges, for his rivals. I mean, what do you advise, say, John Tory in this instance? What does he do now in the face of this comeback narrative?
Well, you're absolutely right that while Rob Ford's, I think, campaign is diminished, it's not disappeared. Ford Nation is smaller, but it's not invisible anymore. There will be people that continue to vote for Rob Ford no matter what. And they will probably be more damaging to the Tory campaign than they will, say, to the Chow campaign. Having said that, I think the challenge for John Tory, if Rob Ford continues to be part of this campaign, is to get media airtime, to get his story told, to get Rob Ford and his issues out of the media, because that simply robs the other candidates of the necessary space in the headlines to be able to establish who they are in this campaign.
What would you advise Olivia Chow's campaign?
I think Olivia Chow's campaign in some ways is in a good spot. In a sense, there's always been this idea that the right wing is full of candidates from Karen Stintz to John Tory to Rob Ford, and that this idea that they will somehow, if they all remain in the campaign until, say, Labor Day, that they will definitely, or to the election, they will split the center-right, fiscally conservative a vote. That may, in fact, be true. Olivia Chow is really the only so-called left wing. I think Olivia Chow is strategy is probably to keep a relatively low key over the course of the summer, not to overexpose Olivia Chow in terms of media interviews and being out there too much. Just enough, I would say, is probably her approach going forward for the next few months.
Interesting. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you.
Well, we want to hear from you. How convinced were you by Mayor Rob Ford's commitment to clean living? And could you find it in yourself to forgive the mayor? Tweet us at Globe Now. Now, staying with the Rob Ford story, one of the hot topics at City Hall is media access to Rob Ford. Last week, you might recall, not all journalists were allowed into Mr. Ford's first press conference back. And for the journalists who were there, they weren't allowed to ask questions. Well, that has many journalists worried. Can they still put those tough questions to Rob Ford? Elizabeth Church is the Globe's Toronto City Hall bureau chief, and she joins us now. Welcome.
Hi.
How has that relationship between the media and Rob Ford changed since his return?
Well, I mean, I think it's always been a rocky relationship. I think it's more strained now. Obviously, the mayor just doing two interviews, four, I guess, over the week, slowly rolling them out. A lot of people feel that there's a lot of questions that have been left unanswered, and we're left to shout them from beside the elevator.
Right. And I mean, the role of the journalist is to ask those questions, those tough questions. I mean, how concerned are you that we're entering a period where it's going to be difficult to ask those tough, direct questions to the mayor?
Well, I mean, it's always been difficult to ask those tough, direct questions to the mayor. He does few one-on-one interviews. Access is very limited to him. So I think we're just going to see more of the same. There was some sense, a bit of a promise from his brother and campaign manager that the mayor would do a round of interviews. Obviously, that doesn't seem to be happening.
Describe what the week has been like since his return. I mean, this is a mayor who was on a leave of absence for 60 days. What has it been like since his return?
Well, I would say that the atmosphere at City Hall changed dramatically. Obviously, last Monday, the cameras returned, barriers around the second floor of City Hall went up, some new ones went up, extra security guards. So, I mean, there's been a lot of tension. It's a highly charged atmosphere, whereas I guess for 2 months when the mayor was away, things were a little more low-key. The deputy mayor published his itinerary every day, so we knew what to plan for. Now we're back living sort of minute by minute.
Well, a place where journalists find it difficult to ask questions or aren't allowed to ask questions are city council meetings, and there's a bunch of them, as I understand, getting underway this week. What can we expect?
Well, there's two council meetings happening today. The city council will sit down to pick replacements, appoint replacements for 2 seats that have become vacant because of elections. Councillors have moved on to Queen's Park and to Ottawa. It's an unusual process, lots of time to sort of see how the mayor make statements, see how he behaves. The real business gets underway tomorrow when we sit down for the regular monthly council meeting. Huge agenda. There's only 2 council meetings left for this term. So really a time for politicians to make a statement, maybe one last time to try to get some things through before the election in October.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Elizabeth. Well, if you've got a moment, hop onto Twitter. Is it okay for the mayor of Canada's largest city to bar some journalists from a news conference? And how concerned are you that politicians might be limiting the kind of access journalists need to ask those tough questions? Tweet us at Globe Now. That's all for today's show. I'm Affan Chowdhry. Thanks again for watching.